Hello? Hello, is anybody there? Uh-oh. Can anybody hear me? Hello? Um, that's right, nobody can hear me. I just got reminded of that. Um, Hopefully everyone is there. This is Wendy Callens. The League of American Bicyclists has an internet outage, and so they could not start the webinar. And so I am trying to take over here and have never done this before. So one thing I'm requesting is if someone could chat, use the chat thing to let me know what they're seeing on the screen, that would be very helpful for me. Or Peggy, you could text me. Okay, I'm going to try switching to... Could people please stand by? I'm going to be talking to Liz on the phone to figure out what's going on next. Hi, Liz.
Hi, sorry. Under the access code, there should be an audio pin. Without it, I can't talk on the webinar. I can only listen. That was my fault for not asking for that correctly.
All right, and what am I looking for?
So you need the telephone number and the access code. Directly underneath it should say an audio pin. It should be 4 digits. And that will allow me to be on the phone as a presenter.
No, I do not have that anywhere.
All right, well, go ahead and if you want to get started, I'm going to go ahead and work with my slow internet then to try to log on and get the audio pin, and I will be with you all shortly.
Okay.
All right. Good luck. We'll be on there in just a moment.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about this, everybody. We're still having technical difficulties. You should be seeing the slideshow. I'm having... Okay, so I'm being told by Peggy that everything is looking good. I don't know how to work the controls here, so I am simply going to be going through the slide presentation as best I can, and hopefully we'll be able to figure things out in order for people to ask questions. Otherwise, we might have to use the chat system in order to ask questions, since I can't seem to find a way to unmute anybody. So to start with, my name is Wendy Callens. I'm the program director for the education programs at the Marin County Bicycle Coalition. Our 2 programs are Safe Routes to Schools and Women on Wheels. And we received a grant through the League of American Bicyclists Women's Program to teach Latina women how to learn to ride a bicycle and provide them with bicycles to do that. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about that program right now. To start with, this is the Canal district in the city of San Rafael in Marin County, California. As you can see from the map, the Canal district is landlocked with water and freeways on all sides, and so they're a very isolated community, very difficult to get in and out of unless you have a car. And most of the women, almost all of the women that we worked with, not only don't own a car, they don't even have a driver's license. Most of them had never rode a bicycle before in their lives. And one of the reasons we did this is that many of the men in the canal do have bicycles. For many of them, it's their primary form of transportation. We had never seen any women riding a bike. And so we wanted to both empower these women by providing them with transportation and teaching them how to use that and showing them where they could go. The first thing we did is we found a partner in the Canal community, and when you're working with disadvantaged communities, I think it's very imperative that you find an organization that's very connected with the community to work with, so that you have a direct connection to the people in the community, and also to have someone to work with who really understands the community and knows the ins and outs and the pitfalls of working in that community. So we chose a program called Parent Services Project. They provide emergency services to women in need in the program. They helped us recruit women, both from their program and also from the Bahia Vista School, which is the elementary school there. We were going to offer it only to 12 women, but we had 18 women show up, so we hustled around and we found 6 more bikes in order to provide this for all the women. One of the key things that Parent Services Projects did for us, besides recruiting the women for us, was provide the translation and for providing, understanding of different cultural sensitivities, which was important to know. And they provide us with licensed child care and healthy snacks for both the women and the children. Again, when you're working with the women, child care is crucial. Most of them are going to have young children in hand, and so providing a place for them to be, and you want to have a licensed facility. And so that was something the Parent Services Project provided for us. Then the first thing we needed to do was get bike donations. And so we first went to our own membership and asked them if anybody had bikes to give away, and we actually were able to get most of the bikes that way. And then 2 of our middle school teen programs held bike drives where they collected used bicycles, and then we took the bicycles and we found the ones that were fixable, because a lot of the ones donated are not even fixable. Some of them are department store bikes that are just shot. And you're looking for really usable bikes. And then we fixed them up, mostly having to do with fixing the brakes and pumping up the tires and replacing tires and tubes and such, and got them ready to give away. Then we needed to recruit instructors. We wanted to have at least one LCI instructor, and they had to be bilingual. They had to be fluent in Spanish. The 2 women that we recruited, one was Rachel Davidman. She works for the Alameda County Sacred Schools Program, and she had just received her LCI. And one of the things we found, it was very difficult to find anyone in the Bay Area who was both an LCI and was fluent in Spanish. So that's something to keep in mind in your community, to specifically train people who are bilingual as LCIs. Our second assistant instructor was Jackie Pereira. She is a very experienced mountain bike instructor, also bilingual, and so we knew that she had a lot of experience working with women and teaching bicycling. So between the 2 of them, we had 2 really, really fantastic instructors. I had my lead instructor, James Siebert, modify our basic Women on Wheels workshops to be able to condense them down to essentially 3 workshops that were 3 hours long. So we started with a basic street skills, which is the basic PowerPoint presentation that most LCIs present as part of Road 1. And we had already modified and translated this with a previous grant. So it was already in Spanish, and we just had to make minor modifications to gear it towards women. So that was the first workshop, was an evening workshop. The second workshop was for the beginning lessons, and we spent actually a lot of time on bike fit. Despite the fact that we asked for information ahead of time on the insing, not one woman would provide their insing information. And so we had to, when you're doing these workshops, figure that you can spend at least a half hour in the first workshop getting the, finding what bike is right for each woman and getting the fit for it. Then we went into the beginning lessons, which for most beginners, you start with balance and control. We actually did not use the take the pedals off technique because some of these bikes, because they were inexpensive department store bikes, you actually could not get the pedals off. But we were able to break them up. We had a volunteer helper, so we were able to get good one-on-one instruction for the women, learning them to get control of their bikes. Those that were more advanced, we took them aside and started on the more advanced. And then we moved into the third workshop, which was the blacktop drills and a bayside ride. So the blacktop drills consisted of your basic traffic circles and slalom. Most of the things that people use in a rodeo for the younger kids, we use to instruct the women on how to get control and be in traffic. And then we took them for a ride on a trail that goes by the bayside in their community. This had a dual purpose. One was to give them an opportunity to ride their bikes in a leisurely fashion where they didn't have to deal with traffic. And secondly, a lot of the women didn't even know the trail was there. And so it introduced them to a wonderful facility in their own community. Then we went on the final ride, and this was a lot of fun. We took them through the neighborhood, and then we took them on the very busy and the only access street that goes in and out of the canal, which is called Francisco Boulevard. It was a little bit scary for some of them because they are riding right next to traffic. There is no bike lane. But we got them through that one, and then we periodically would stop and discuss what we just did and have people talk about what made them nervous, what they could do, and give further instruction. Then we took them and taught them the 2 different ways to do a left-hand turn, a regular left-hand turn, or dismounting the bikes and using the crosswalks. About half of them elected to use the crosswalks on this one. And then we took them into the downtown area. Again, we wanted them to see, how they could access the downtown. On the way, we pointed out a major shopping center and the local high school. And then from the downtown, we did another left turn. And this time, every one of them did the left turn. I was very proud of them. And then we took them on a loop around to another access street to get to their neighborhood. This time one that had full bike lane facilities for them. And then, for the final one, we took them through a tunnel. We have in Marin County a great new facility that is a tunnel that takes us from the city of San Rafael to the city of Larkspur, which takes them to a major shopping center, and the ferry, which then can take them into San Francisco. Again, along the way, we showed them the middle school, which is another place where their children go to school. Then we went through the tunnel, and this was a Saturday when the food trucks are out, and we provided them money to go and get some food at the food trucks and enjoy the shopping center. They were on their own for about a half hour. And then we broke them up into 2 groups because one of the groups was getting very antsy. They were ready to go fast, and we were going very slow for the slower people in the group. So I took the faster group back through the tunnel, and that's when they discovered that this tunnel was a mere 10 minutes from their home. We taught them how to cross the freeway, how to take the lane and get through a freeway, which is the other thing that keeps them from being able to get out. And then we took them back from where we started. And so one of the women had already by this time got herself a trailer donation and was pulling her kids behind her as she goes around the community. So we thought this was something that was a big success. And overall, it was just very exciting to watch these women get excited about the possibilities and learn to ride their bikes. Just a few of the lessons that we did learn. As I said before, you have to leave time in the beginning for a bike fit. And another thing that we learned is that start times are kind of fuzzy. A lot of the women would show up late, some of them as much as a half hour to an hour late, and you need to figure that in when you're working with people of another culture. You also have to provide for different levels. This was something that we learned along the way, that, as I said, some of the women were ready to just book it, and other women were still wobbly and nervous. And the people who were the most wobbly and nervous, we actually got a number of volunteers on the final ride, and we buddied them up with somebody to ride with them and help them along. So that's something to prepare for. And you also might think about, if you have enough people and volunteers, to break it into 2 groups, a more advanced group and a beginning group. And then finally, one of the things that we had to think about was storing the bikes. It was to store or not to store. In our case, we didn't have an option because we could not find a place to store the bikes in the community. And so we had to develop ways to get the bikes home with each woman. It isn't as though they could just ride their bikes home, because usually they arrived with their children. And so some of them that lived close by walked home, and we did have a truck available to help other women get back, and in some cases their husbands or other relatives would come and pick them up and bring them home. But these are the kind of logistics you have to keep in mind when you're doing these kind of programs. So now we are ready for questions, and I still don't know how to find out who's on the call and how to, let me see.
Hey, Wendy, can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, all right, great, thank you. So I'm here, so I can definitely help moderate questions for you. We have a couple here to get started. So thanks all, and I apologize for the technical difficulties in the beginning. We had an internet outage here at the League of American Bicyclists, and so Wendy valiantly began the webinar without me, so thank you. So Wendy, one of the first questions was, did you create a special Spanish curriculum for use with this program, and is that something that you'd be able to share out to the folks here on the webinar?
Yes, we did create a curriculum, and our guidebook does include the curriculum, which the League has, and I'm sure they will provide that to anybody who wants it. We also provided them with the Spanish language basic street skills, and I'm sure they're figuring out how to make that available as well.
Great. And so I would say to folks, I'll share my email address at the end. I can make sure that that's something that gets uploaded on the website when we are publicizing. At the end of each webinar, we'll create a separate site where you can go and see all of the resources from past advocacy webinars that we've hosted, and we'll include those as PDF downloads for folks as well. Great.
I also have figured out how to unmute people if somebody wants to ask a question.
Sure, I can, yeah, they can type, so if folks have questions, you can type them in the box, and then I can moderate them for you. That seems to be the easiest way, for just so people don't talk over one another, but if folks have specific questions, You can click the raise your hand button, and I can unmute you if it's going to be easier for you just to chat versus typing in the question. The next question, was this a combination of a learn to ride and riding in traffic class, or did most of the participants already know how to ride a bike and just hadn't done it recently?
I would say that almost all of the participants have never ridden a bike before in their lives.
Great. So it's definitely.
I also want to pass along also that we actually got a second grant from the Sylvia Bingham Foundation. Sylvia Bingham was a young woman who was killed on a tragic bicycle accident, and her parents set up this fund, and so they're the ones that helped round out the budget for us.
Great. Does anybody, I think one of the questions that I have for you, Wendy, talk to me a little bit about how your organization trained staff to be able to address some of the cultural barriers that these women had to riding.
So we had a training session with my lead instructor and our partner with Parent Service Project, sitting down with our two instructors and myself. And at that time, they learned the curriculum, and at the same time, Florencia, who was our partner, was able to chime in and let us know, what was going to work and what wasn't going to work. We modified the curriculum based on her input, and she was really invaluable in helping us understand the culture in which we were working.
Great. Has there been any follow-up, and this is another question from an attendee, has there been any follow-up with these women after the initial sessions that you did with them?
We are actually in the process of doing follow-up right now. We just developed an evaluation. We're going to follow up and see if they are still riding their bikes. We also, one of the things we're really concerned about is, are the bikes still working? One of the issues with refurbished bikes is they break again. We hope to develop a partnership with Trips for Kids, which happens to have a warehouse in the Canal community and a workshop there, and we're hoping we're going to be able to hook them up with the women so the women can get their bikes fixed on an ongoing basis, or even better, learn how to fix their own bikes. And that's something that we're going to be working with soon. And so I don't have the follow-up information yet on them, and I hope to have that within a couple of weeks.
Since you mentioned, this is another question from an attendee, since you mentioned adaptations to the curriculum, what would you say were the main cultural barriers that you identified to work with the Latina women?
Trying to remember now. I think one of the main ones is, again, that they had never ridden a bike before. And the timing issue. The fact that they have multiple children of various different ages, and that we needed to pay attention to their needs for that. And that's a really excellent question that I'm not able to answer off the top of my head, unfortunately. So I apologize for that, but those are the things that jump out at me right away. I think one of the other things is we had originally were going to have 4 different day sessions of 2 hours each, and it was recommended that instead we do the 3 hours because of time constraints that they would have had in being able to spend that much time with us.
Sure. And so I think one of the important things when you're developing programs like this is to sort of be able to do that sort of inventory, that cultural inventory, and really just looking at what barriers might actually be cultural and what might be maybe not necessarily directly related to the culture of the group that you're working with, but might just be barriers to new writers or might be barriers for other things that might prevent them from having access to bikes in the past. So I think that's, I mean, and I think one of the things that I thought was such a great strength of your program, Wendy, was that instead of, as Marin County Bicycle Coalition, taking that on and saying, we're going to do this inventory, by partnering with an existing community organization that was doing really great direct service with these women and families already, you were able to rely very heavily on their expertise and not necessarily operate outside of your organization's wheelhouse. Would you say that that was true?
Yeah.
Or that was one of the strengths of the partnership?
That was definitely, I would say, don't do this unless you have a partner or unless you already have a strong relationship in the community. You know, and another thing that came to mind that we made sure that the bikes we got them were upright, step-through frames. We did not want to provide them with anything expensive or fancy, anything where they had to lean over. And the step-through frames was we wanted to make sure that they were women's bikes on the outside chance that their husbands or another relative would try to grab the bike for themselves, which can happen. And we wanted to make sure that this remained their bikes. So this was one way we did that, is to make them women's bikes.
Great. Another question from an attendee, were you able to, and as part of the follow-up or as part of the curriculum, was there any attempt or to try to organize them with a neighborhood bike co-op or bike shop where they could take their bike for maintenance or classes? I don't recall if that was a piece of the original curriculum or if that was something you guys were planning on the back end.
To hook them up with I'm sure what's the last part, I'd hook them up with the bike shop for...
I think the question was, so you talked about one of the things that you're working on in follow-up is just to making sure that the bikes are maintained. Have you had an opportunity to reach out to a local bike co-op or a shop that would be interested in helping you with that?
Yeah,
follow-up?
That is Trips for Kids. We should both where the warehouse was and where their outlet store was. And I am actually going to be in negotiations with the operations manager for Trips for Kids to see about getting them engaged with their warehouse and shop so that they can either get their bikes fixed or learn how to fix them themselves. I think that's very crucial because when you're using refurbished bikes, they are not going to stay in good working condition, and they need to be able to know how to do simple things like pump up their air, change a tire, adjust their brakes, things like that.
That's great. And I think that just further sort of reemphasizes the need for partnerships to make sure that you're creating sort of wraparound services for populations that have typically been underserved by bike education. So I think that's a really great indicator. So we had the original partnership with the organization prior that was helping you with registration and advertising and recruitment, and now we have an additional partnership with Trips for Kids on the conclusion or the back end of this program that's going to help with connecting these women to things like bike maintenance and resources of that line. Is that correct? Is that a good kind of recap?
Yeah, very much so.
Okay, great. And then there was another question from a participant or from an attendee, but I think you sort of already got to it. It said, what was the feedback from participants after the program? But you said you're in the process, you've just distributed sort of an evaluation form, but maybe share any anecdotal feedback that you've gotten from the women?
Well, I think the anecdotal feedback was that they were very, very happy at the very end. They all very much enjoyed getting the bikes, learning how to ride them, and I think the most exciting thing for them was learning about that tunnel and how close it was to their house. They were just going, oh my God, you know, because they didn't know until we got back how close that was to where they live. And keep in mind, a lot of these women, they're very isolated. They don't get out much, and they're home with small children, and so they don't know anything outside their own neighborhood. And so they were just really excited to know that there was this great place, and it was a 10-minute bike ride away.
Great. Another question, and this one's more directed toward the league. Edgar is asking, does the league have a database of bilingual LCIs? And I would say that it's not formalized, but it's something, just to tell a little bit about the league cycling instructor. The curriculum and the program itself is actually going through a really amazing sort of revamp that we're about to roll out probably in the next couple of weeks, when we're shifting the curriculum to make it more inclusive. So that means providing opportunities for shorter courses for folks, as well as emphasizing things that lead to more inclusion. So that includes information in other languages, women-specific courses, all of that nature. And so those materials, as they become available, the league will be distributing them. I would say in the meantime, Edgar, if you want to get in touch with me directly, I can help you navigate our LCI database so to see if there is a bilingual LCI in your area that would be interested in partnering with you. And I would say that one of the cool things is that as advocacy groups are taking on bike education, whether or not you utilize a formal LCI in your program, really taking an emphasis on the language barrier can really open up some doors to get people included. And as a sort of a hat tip to what's coming down the pipeline for Women Bike, we'll be concluding our advocacy toolkits for this round of mini grant recipients by hosting Liz Jost with We Bike NYC next month. She developed a bilingual guide for bike clubs interested in including people that speak Spanish as their first language in bike clubs. And so in that is included a Spanish waiver, a Spanish sort of vocabulary list of some basic vocabulary glossary terms, and then as well as some great culturally relevant photos of women performing bike maintenance. So I think that it was kind of great to see these two programs come back to back, because I think a lot of what folks are now interested in will be presented out through Liz's webinar next month too. So like kind of the next step after Latina Women on Wheels. So great. If there's not any other questions, Wendy, do you have any final thoughts or sort of words of encouragement for folks interested in taking on the challenge of creating more inclusive bike education programs?
My final thought is to keep in mind that this is not only an underserved community in so many ways, but as far as bicycling is concerned, it's not a community that gets a lot of attention. I think we're, especially with this the new women's initiatives going on, they're starting to get more attention. There are a lot of health issues in this community. You can definitely partner with your health department. I know that the local health department was very excited that we had this program. They want us to see us do more. And now, of course, the challenge is finding the funding in order to offer this to more communities. But this is a community that is desperately in need of this form of transportation. So I really urge you as much as possible to fold this into your overall education programs.
Great. So real quickly, I'm going to just change presenters really quick so that I can show my screen, if it'll let me.
Yep, we can see it.
Great. For some reason. All right. And then I just wanted to throw up a couple of really quick slides. Is that good? Can you see my screen now with the beginning of the toolkit slides?
I can.
Great. So this was supposed to happen at the beginning, but there's just a couple of relevant slides. And so just to thank you all for attending. Thank you to Wendy for putting together this great slideshow and showing great calm under pressure by jumping in and beginning the webinar, since I was unable to be on at the very front. But just a reminder that Wendy's program, as well as all the other ones through these advocacy toolkits, they've received mini grant funds from Women Bike. And the idea behind these small grants is just to really help support the innovative ideas that are happening at these grassroots advocacy organizations, particularly when they address the issue of getting more women on bikes. And we want them to participate as riders, advocates, and leaders to create strong communities and celebrate the joy of riding a bike. A quick shout out to the sponsors of Women Bike in 2014. So these are the folks that helped to provide some of the grant dollars that made these awesome programs happening. And I was really excited to hear about how Wendy was able to leverage our modest grant into more funding for this program to continue. And so as folks on, as the boots on the ground, I know funding is always a concern, and that when we talk about serving underserved populations, any connections that you can make towards health, so looking at local hospitals, looking at your health department, those are really good entry points to discovering new lines of funding that bike advocacy, I think, has traditionally underutilized. Folks that want to stay up to date with what's going on with Women Bike, here's how you can find us. You can subscribe to our e-news that comes out about once a month, or you can join us on Facebook or Twitter. Follow our blog for updates and recaps from different cool Women Bike things that are coming down the pipeline. And then if you have any questions, or certainly if you're doing something great to get women on bikes in your community, I'd love to hear about it. Feel free to email me, Liz Jones at bikeleague.org, or that's my direct line there. We have been recording this webinar, and so in the next couple of days we'll be able to throw that up for you all so that you can reuse this or share this with your staff at your organizations. But we do thank you once again. And then here's our faces, so you know what we look like, of who is not talking to you on the phone today. So I'm going to go ahead and X out of this and go back to my fun stuff here. So if that is all of the folks here, then we will kind of move on. And thank you again for attending, and thank you, Wendy, again for your great work.
Thank you.
All right, have a great day.